talk about complexity. I'm going to try to impart on you sort of this idea that you can get complexity from very simple algorithms, and we're going to try to make the mental leap between sort of these algorithms we'll talk about here and trading algorithms in the marketplace today. I'm going to briefly talk about speed. Anything worth doing is worth doing fast, right? If we don't have speed in the marketplace with an algorithm, it's very likely that the algorithm will be ineffective. And that's just a byproduct of the marketplace that we operate in today. It's not a rule I set. It's just a rule that the marketplace sets. Lastly, we'll talk about failure and how it's important to embrace failure. And that's kind of a foreign concept for highly motivated, overachieving people, such as the folks in this room. But we'll talk about how designing for failure can be very productive, and it can actually prolong your careers in this industry. I'm going to use this device. It's not a real trading algorithm, but we're going to think about things in terms of we get a signal, right? It's just going to be denoted by this black dot, and think of the black dot as true or false or what have you. We're going to have a bunch of true falses up here. That's a signal. We're going to run an algorithm that's going to determine as we go through time how this system, this sheet, this grid starts updating as a byproduct of this algorithm. So I go step by step, row by row, and I'm going to determine whether a cell is white or black based on this formula. As I step through this, I can sort of decide what values these cells take. Right? Well, what's interesting about that, you say? Well, let's fast forward this and let's look at the first sort of 20 steps of this algorithm. And what this algorithm does is just paints a picture, and maybe you can recognize, yeah, there's some patterns to it. There's some things I can sort of recognize. There's also things that seem like they might have some shape, something repetitive to them, some structure to it. But I need to see more. Okay, I'll show you more. This is the first 200 steps, right? This is a very simple algorithm. You could execute it at home with a sheet of paper. And now you start seeing that there's some high complexity with something that's exceedingly simple. This is 8 rules to decide whether something's white or black. Oh, let's make it like the market. And let's start with random inputs. I get that. All right, there's some stuff here that we recognize. There's some, we see triangles, we see shapes that some repeat themselves. But it turns out the only way you can ever know what the values are in any step of this evolution is to actually run it. Okay, if I want to know what it looks like on the 200th step, I got to run it 199 times. 1,000,000, I got to run it 999,999 times. I cannot skip a step in figuring out what it looks like. There's complexity that emerges when you start trading systems, particularly systematic ones, that are really unknowable in advance. And that's both exceedingly exciting and terrifying at the same time, right? Because you have to risk manage for that complexity. Idea number 2 is about speed. This is XYZ stock. It doesn't matter, okay? But these are 1-minute bars. And if you looked at this, you'd say, oh, wow, something happened sometime around lunch, and great, and I wish I were there to take advantage of that opportunity. Well, how fast would you have needed to be? It turns out you would have needed to have reacted within about 275 milliseconds. In fact, you would have had to react in half that time because all the opportunity was here. And I'm not making this up. This is actually real data. And 275 milliseconds is an eternity when you're talking about today's computer systems. There are trades out there that cannot be executed unless you are sub 50 microseconds tick to trade. On the one hand, we have this enormous complexity. We don't know how things are going to happen until we get there. And on the other hand, I have to be really fast. Last idea, failure. I am an engineer by training. I studied civil engineering at Georgia Tech. I'm structural engineering concentration. I understand things in terms of columns and beams and foundations and whatnot. It turns out that there are some really useful parallels when you're thinking about engineering systems of any kind that will help you in risk management. You can't possibly eliminate all failure states from any engineering system. But what you can do is you can influence the shape of that probability distribution. You can influence what states you are likeliest to fail into. If I'm talking about a building, what are some really bad failure states? Well, roof imploding on itself, columns buckling, beams shearing off. Less bad would be cracks showing up on the walls. Maybe you see, some leaks. Maybe the building settles a little bit. They're less bad. Why? Well, because we have time to react to it. The former cases, the really bad cases, there's a name for them. They're called brittle failure mechanisms. Think of things snapping. Whereas the other ones, it's all about bending, not breaking. I invented this, I guess. I just came up with it. 3 general failure states in algos. 1, can't trade even when I want to. That's a general failure state. 2, I'm trading when I want to, but I'm trading at kind of weird prices and in weird quantities, sort of an in-between one. And last, I'm trading even when I don't want to. Can you guess which ones are the really bad ones? I'd like to say the last 2 are. Turns out you can influence by designing trading systems for failure. I didn't say designing them to fail. You don't want to design things to fail. You want to design things for failure. You can influence the algorithm to make sure that if it fails, hey, just drop out. Hey, I don't know what's going on, drop out. Instead of keep going and potentially increase the likelihood you're going to fall into those latter 2 buckets, which are bad. Those are firm-ending, career-ending buckets. You don't want to be in those. When we think of failure in algos, I'm sure everybody thinks, oh, let's losing a bunch of money. That's failure for an algo. Well, it turns out no. It's very unlikely that that's really the cause of why your algo is going bad. In fact, that's more of a strategic problem. You can design really good algorithms that are just good at losing money because it's a bad strategy. The fact is there's lots of different ways, lots of gotchas that come into algorithm design or realities in the marketplace that are like that complexity in the first picture. Things they're hard to anticipate. They're hard to understand how these things are going to impact the behavior of your algorithm. And as a result, the whole marketplace is dealing with a bunch of these little speed bumps along the way. How does that manifest itself? It manifests itself in things like the flash crash. If you're thinking as a citizen, as a concerned citizen, about, well, how am I going to be insulated from these nefarious high-speed traders, well, don't look to Uncle Sam to solve that problem. In fact, the best solution for that problem is in here. You're on the front lines of using and designing, testing these systems. Uncle Sam is going to be slow to that, to come to any sort of appreciation for why these things happen. And I'll prove it to you. If I did a word search in the report, and I wanted to see sort of where's the focus of this report? What are the important ideas in this report? And it turns out that things like complexity get 1 mention. And that counts complex and complexity. Things like market structure, fragmentation, things that have increased the complexity of how markets in the US operate, didn't get a mention. You guys are smarter. You'll be in this marketplace. You have to deal with the complexity first and foremost. You have to risk manage for it. There's a tension. Okay, there's a tension between a desire to win, a desire to succeed in the marketplace, and the things you kind of need to do to risk manage your trading system. Insulate yourself and steer yourself into those acceptable buckets of risk. You need to do a lot of logging. You need to corroborate a lot of your inputs. You need to make sure you're not making any loose assumptions about the things that your algorithm is seeing, your trading system is seeing. All those things takes time. And time is what? It's money. So I'm concerned about that tension. I'm concerned that there aren't, that there is no visible limit to how quick we can be in processing market data, processing fill data, and that there will be too many incentives to skip a step here or there. Thank you.